Baseball is more than a game. It's memories made on a dusty sandlot, sparking a lifetime of childlike joy long after the sun's gone down. It's parents in the bleachers, watching their child's first swing in Little League, voices trembling with pride, joy passed on, but nerves just the same. It's breathing in the springtime air as you pass through the turnstiles to see your field of dreams, rising out of a long and lonesome winter. It's hope, it's renewal, and it's joy. It's the last of the old timers telling their great grandkid about being there, way back then, that moment, that feeling that will outlive them, as they rightly should.
I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
It's the rookie stepping up to the plate for his first swing, while the veteran tips his hat one last time. It's a name everyone knows, a story you've heard in many forms from many people, and a legend that will never die. It's the sting of heartbreak that lingers, but never outmuscles the joy and hope that keeps you coming back. It's a crowd holding its breath on a mild November evening. Game 7, bottom of the 10th, one up with 2 outs and a century of pain on the line. One pitch from despair, or one pitch from deliverance.
It's over, and the Cubs have finally won it all.
Baseball's more than a game. So take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. This is a Sporting Almanac podcast.
It is hard not to be romantic about baseball.
It is hard not to be romantic about baseball, Ben. How are you today?
Mate, I'm fine. You've sent shivers down my spine with that intro. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm pretty good. I've done my mic test this week, so my microphone's working. That's the important thing.
It was fine last week. You just sounded like you were in a room, really, rather than on a microphone. But we live and learn.
It's a lesson learned.
I have form. So who am I to criticise? Mate, I just want to swing for the fences after that intro. Hit some bombs. Go yard, as they say.
Well, I guess I could say something quite controversial from the out. Obviously, this is a very Western-centric view, very much in the sense that I do have one foot in Britain and one foot in America, a lot of the time, but certainly about sport. I think baseball and football are the two best sports in the world. I think that nothing else can compete in terms of popularity and history combined, and how much it means to the people, and how deep it goes, and how much it's rooted in collective knowledge and memory and history and legend and stories and everything that makes the human living as a human worth it, if that makes sense. Everything we love about sport. And that's probably quite a controversial thing to say. And obviously,
I don't think that's controversial.
Notwithstanding other countries with other sports that go equally deep.
I had the same. I was nodding along there. You know, you can see me. Obviously, people listening to this can't. I was nodding along there because I think I agree with that. Like, it doesn't mean that it's my second favourite sport. I know it is one of yours. But when I was when I was reading it, I about it and you know, thinking back to sort of things I've seen and watched, obviously on the TV and like movies. Obviously, Moneyball is the obvious one. Field of Dreams as well, isn't it? It's a good one.
It is, yeah.
Like,
mention that.
Yeah, like I had the same. I did the same comparative exercise with association football because I did think that there were a lot of similarities in the way in which it sort of embeds itself in community and culture. And is intertwined and inseparable from people's like lived experience in that way.
Yeah, and I should clarify, like you say, it's not your second favourite sport. I don't think it's my second favourite sport. I don't think it's my favourite American sport, really, in terms of
you prefer
how much I enjoy
American
it. Yeah,
football.
American football, yeah, NFL. And I would say cricket is probably ahead of it too. Both as a sport I've played and a sport I enjoy watching.
Now you're talking my language.
I would say it's probably next after all them. I do love rugby, and I did love watching the England women win the World Cup today. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
But
yes.
it just doesn't, I don't know.
The Red Roses.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Had to get a mention of that in.
Ellie Kildunn with another wonder try.
She's just incredible.
Quickly,
but yeah.
Can I quickly, before I know I'm going to sidetrack us again, but fuck Collingwood.
Fuck Collingwood.
And
seriously.
Brisbane Lions coming through in the end. Shame for Hawthorn. A valiant effort. Getting done by Geelong again, as our Australian friends told us is historically a reoccurring theme for Hawthorn at the moment, unfortunately.
Yes.
But thanks, guys, for that, because we weren't familiar with that dynamic. But yeah, fuck Collingwood.
But one thing we were familiar with was fuck Collingwood, so yeah. Glad we could clarify that early days.
Yeah.
God, I hope some of the Australians are still listening to this.
But no,
it's about retaining listeners as much as anything, and then not immediately going straight from there.
Pandering.
Going straight from a popular episode like that to not being able to record properly is another trick as well. Whoops-a-daisy. Anyway, should we talk baseball?
Yes, let's talk baseball, because it's something that we can give the Americans credit for, unlike their Ryder Cup team.
I'm actually going to come to that. Can we give them... No, yes, we can give them credit.
Yes, baseball.
And again, should we not be too premature on the... We're recording this on the Saturday of the Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
We know as Europeans, and you know as Americans, that things can change rather quickly in the Ryder Cup. So let's be biting our tongue until 24 hours from now.
Yeah, but it's going very nicely for us.
It is so far. Anyway, baseball. I don't have a how-to baseball in 3 minutes. I do think it is worth explaining it a little bit. It's for the British.
Quite involved. It's a bit like cricket.
Yeah, so there's a lot to it, but also you don't need to know a lot to it to watch it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
You can watch the high. Like everyone knows what a home run looks like.
Yeah,
and everyone knows it's great. It's a guy hitting the ball out of the ground, and people in the crowd trying to catch it, and sometimes trying to catch it while still holding a baby and a beer at the same time and managing it, which is just wonderful stuff. You love to see it. And they get to keep the ball.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you think, out of all of the ways to score in sport, there is a better feeling than hitting a home run?
I think it's comparable to scoring a goal in football, in that it probably happens with a similar frequency, relatively speaking, in terms of times per game.
Yeah, but
maybe actually slightly less frequency, to be fair.
Where I think it might edge it is that it's just you.
It's eyes on you, baby. As you circle the bases, it is eyes on you,
and you just light it up, and then you have this ceremonial moment where you just jog round, soaking up the adulation of the crowd, and then you get to celebrate.
Yeah, I certainly don't think there's a better moment than hitting a walk-off home run, which is, for those who don't know, hitting the home run which ends the game.
Yeah, or a grand slam.
Or a grand slam, or a walk-off grand slam, indeed, which there have been a handful of in the history of Major League Baseball.
Yes. I mean, that would be outrageous. Sorry, I say that because, like you say, everybody knows what a home run is, and obviously the crowd... Everybody loves it from a spectacle perspective. For you were touching on some of the things. You get to keep the ball, blah blah blah. But I just wondered, at that feeling, because it's better than a strikeout from a pitcher's perspective. I would have thought.
Well, you get lots of strikeouts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in
a game, you'll get lots in a season. If you go through a game as a starting pitcher and you don't get a strikeout, that would be an embarrassment potentially. Well, not necessarily. There's plenty of ways to get people out, and obviously not all pitchers are necessarily going for strikeouts. Whoa. But generally speaking,
I know
if you're pitching 6 or 7 innings, you're expected to get a decent number of Ks, which are strikeouts.
Well, I mean, I know you have you're going to summarise it in a sec, but I keep taking us on tangents and and diverting us a little bit. But I guess baseball's really, really bloody hard because the distance between the pitcher and the batter.
Yeah,
to the velocity of the pitch, it means that your reaction time, I think, it has to be the best in any sport to hit it.
There's a certain amount of time that the human brain cannot process data, and then there's a certain amount of time that you have to process data, and then there's a certain amount of time you need to swing, and all of that basically leaves it so that the time that you can't process data and the time it takes you to swing gives you about 100 milliseconds or something, so 0.1 of a second or something. It might be less than that, to make a decision, basically, to judge, is this something I can swing at? Where's it going? Where do I need to swing? And what that results in is that even the best batters in the history of the game will fail
averages
2 times out of 3, essentially.
Yeah.
You will only get a hit at 1 in 3 times. And if you get a hit 1 in 3 times, you're going to the Hall of Fame. Yeah, 3 batting average, as it's known. It's out of 1,000 basically. And you're going to the Hall of Fame.
You can just divide it by 10. It's a percentage, right? You're hitting the ball 33% time, and that would make you like one of the greatest players of all time. Like most people have like a 25%. That's like the standard for the major league, like 250. So 25% is like bang average. Generally speaking, some years it's more, somewhere in the 250, 260 mark is average. Yeah,
so you can get away with less, but only if you're really, really specialised, like a catcher or something, or a very good shortstop.
Yeah,
very good in the field, but any less than that, and you're just not going to make it in the majors.
It's a really hard sport, and the team's only 9 guys.
Yeah.
So you were going to tell us the Billy basics.
The Billy basics, yeah. Well, it's 9 aside. Of that, traditionally and historically, it's made up of 1 pitcher, and then 8 position players, as they're known, which is 4 players on the bases, so first baseman, second baseman, third baseman, and then shortstop, who is in between second and third base, whereas second baseman is in between first and second base. So if you can imagine 2 people covering the corner bases and then 1 person in each of the gaps in between the bases, essentially, then you've got 3 outfielders, a left fielder, a right fielder, and a centre fielder. They tend to be your quick guys with big arms who can cover a lot of ground to make catches or chase down balls that have been hit over the head. And then you got a catcher behind, and the pitcher throws and the catcher catches. And that is your 9 men in a baseball team. Historically, all of them used to bat, and then a rule called the designated hitter was introduced in the American League. So for many years, in the American League, but not the National League, because it's made up of 2 leagues, Major League Baseball, which I'll come to, you could stick a designated hitter in instead of your pitcher, so they wouldn't need to bat. But in the National League, the pitcher still batted, and if it was an interleague game, whoever the home team was would make the rules, basically. However, and to my disappointment, it's just designated hitters all around now, so pitchers very rarely bat unless they are particularly good at it.
Like?
Yes, Ohtani, the legend that is. Shohei Ohtani, who is probably about the most famous and best player in baseball at the moment, who can do both. And if he's not pitching on any given day, he will be put in as designated hitter, essentially, and be a hitter.
He's considered the greatest 2-way player of all time, isn't he?
He's incredibly good. Well, not the well.
2-way player
in terms of someone who actually is a 2-way player, as opposed to being a pitcher first and later a batter. There is someone particularly who went down that career route, who I will come to later. But yes, he, as a 2-way player who does both during a season, yes, he's in an absolute class of his own. It's incredible.
Yeah, nice. Baseball.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's I've literally got to my first note in this. We're very good at going off on tangents. 9 players each. The game is 9 innings. So you have each inning has a top where the away team bats and a bottom where the home team bats, and it is always that way around. There's no coin toss or anything to decide. The home team always bats second, and each side bats in each innings until they make 3 outs, or until they have 3 outs, in which case you then swap and the other team comes on. You then rotate around the order, so obviously you start off 1, 2, 3 in the order, and then once people get out, you keep going round and round and round. You can make substitutions, and you can swap out players for pinch hitters, as they're called, who might just come in just to hit, or you might make proper substitutions and they'll take over their position or whatever else. And obviously you can substitute your pitchers as well. And pitchers you have a starter and relievers afterwards. So your starter tends to pitch anywhere between, if they're doing well, anywhere between 6 and 9 innings. 9 innings obviously being the full game, which occasionally happens, usually if the pitcher's doing very well, or if they're on the way to a no-hitter or even a perfect game, which is where you... I'm going down tangents myself here. Talking about perfect game.
Perfect game is worth mentioning, though, because it is...
It's the ultimate.
Yeah.
So a perfect game is 27 up, 27 down, and that means In any to finish the 9 innings, you have to make 27 outs, obviously 3 per innings, and to do that without conceding a single hit, a walk, not hitting any players with the pitch, no errors in the field as well. So your team has to back you up on it to get no stats against you whatsoever. Is a perfect game, and it's happened. Oh, I really should have looked up the number. Not many times. It's something like 20, 25 times or something in MLB history.
And given that the regular season is like 160 games or something?
24. So it was a great guess by me.
Yeah, it's a great guess. But sorry, I was trying to turn that into like a percentage. It's like it's
not
0.00001% of baseball games ever played.
Yeah, so they play 100. Each team plays 162 games a year, and
that was a good guess by me.
League.
We're on a flyer for the guesses.
Yeah, and that's and postseason games as well. And there's only been one perfect game ever in the World Series, in the history of the World Series, which was, and I have this written down. If you would kindly bear with me, that was Mr. Don Larson in 1956, Game 5 of the World Series for the Yankees. 97 pitches against the Dodgers, and famous for Yankees catcher Yogi Berra jumping into his arms at the end of it. A 2-0 victory. So yeah, that was good. Where was I? Oh yeah, line 2 of this. Fantastic. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the details, so we will be on this forever, but the batting team obviously are trying to score runs. To do that, they have to get on base, or they have to hit a home run. So either you hit...
Do you care if it's a walk or a hit?
Just got to get on base, man.
You do not.
You do not. Sorry, there's going to be a lot of Moneyball references in this.
There will be. Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
It already has been. It's impossible not to be romantic about baseball. So you try and reach base by whatever means necessary, and you can reach base either by hitting the ball and running to the base. If you hit the ball further, you can run to the second, you can run to third, you can even run all the way home. It doesn't have to go over the fence. That's called an inside the park home run, and it usually only happens when the other team are idiots.
Makes a mistake, yeah.
Yeah. Or you can draw a walk. So 3 strikes and you're out. I'm sure people know that. And to get a strike, the pitcher either throws it in the strike zone. You don't have to hit it if it's between your chest and your knees, is it? And the width of the home base, it's the strike zone. And that is a strike. Or if you swing and miss, it's a strike as well. Or if you foul tip. So if you get an edge on it, essentially, that's a strike.
But you don't
can't get struck out on a foul.
Yeah, exactly.
You can keep fouling forever and ever and ever. You'll never get out fouling. You have to miss one to get out. Or if the pitcher pitches outside that strike zone and you don't swing, it's a ball. And after 4 balls, you get a walk. So if the pitcher's either inaccurate or if you've got a good eye and you judge it perfectly, or if the umpire's terrible, which is often the case, you can get yourself a walk and you can just go to first base. Or you can get hit by the pitch. Yeah. You can't get hit by the pitch. The pitcher has to hit you. You have to make every effort to get out of the way of it. Otherwise, it'll just count as a ball, I think.
And it'll hurt.
But anyway, yes. or the pitcher can take too long to throw a pitch to you now. There's a pitching clock. That also counts as a ball.
Yeah, that's
gone off on so many tangents.
I think, the thing that's interesting, though, with the pitching is that pitchers will deliberately pitch outside the striking zone.
Yeah.
But try and
it's a game of chess.
Try and persuade you to, because if you swing, it doesn't matter if it's pitch outside the zone, does it? That's a strike.
If you swing, it's a strike.
Yeah.
If you swing and miss, it's a strike regardless. They can throw it a mile wide, and if you swing and miss, as people have as a joke before, and still get called as a strike.
Well, and also the irony is this is a slightly uninformed position because I'm not a baseball connoisseur, but the striking zone is also ironically the best place at which to strike the ball, and so pitchers will try and deliver pitches that, there's various different versions of pitches you can do, the same way you have like spin bowling in cricket. You have curveballs, sliders, fastballs, where they will try and persuade the umpire, like by pitching just outside the strike zone, but getting the umpire to mistakenly call a strike.
Yeah, and the catchers will also do a thing called framing the ball, where they'll, as soon as they catch it, they'll lift their hand into the strike zone, so it looks like they've caught it in the strike zone. So if it comes just below, you quickly lift your hand up and try and calm the umpire. Some umpires are better than others.
Yes,
and
I've seen this.
There's a pitch challenge system as well, or is it coming in, or is it already in? I don't know. But as I've mentioned with VAR, I'm perfectly happy for umpires and referees to make mistakes. They should just be dealt with accordingly if they do. So if you have an umpire who's making a lot of mistakes, then maybe you knock him down to the minors.
And there's some absolutely incredible videos of coaches losing their heads with umpires and then getting ejected and stuff like that.
It's been part of baseball since the very beginning. That sort of idea that it is okay for the coaches to yell at the officials, and the coaches will sometimes take one for the team, essentially.
Who's the clip
and
of
making
the guy?
sure they're the one yelling.
What's the clip of the guy calling him a cocksucker?
I don't know.
It's really funny. I should have looked it up.
I mean, John Madden did that.
Yes, he did. But I'm thinking of. I'm definitely thinking of a baseball confrontation where he's basically like screaming, like, "Give us a chance!" And anyway, it's very funny.
Anyway, there's been some bad umpires in baseball. Most notably, Mr. Angel Hernandez. Just Google him if you want to see some bad umpiring. It's very funny. Anyway, basically, at the end of the 9 innings, whoever has the most runs wins. There's a lot more to it than that, but we're already 20 minutes into this episode, and it's basically a game of chess between the pitcher and the batter, and there's a lot of analytics obviously in the game. There's a lot of statistical analysis and a lot of statistics.
So many statistics
in the game. I do actually have a list of the stats, but I mean, it's crazy. There's obviously batting average, as we mentioned. It's how many times you hit the ball, displayed as a percentage, a decimal, basically. So 0.300, you'd call it 300, and that means you're doing very well. I think it's been many a year since anyone's hit 400 in a season, for example. That's like, if anyone did that nowadays, you'd be probably straight in the Hall of Fame just on the back of that. Then you've got on-base percentage. That's the one they talk about in Moneyball.
Yeah.
That's just how many times you get on base. Doesn't matter how you get there. If you take walks, great. If you get hit by a pitch a lot, that's great. Doesn't matter. Just get yourself on base. Slugging percentage is like average, but it's like a weighted average. So it takes into account how many doubles and how many triples and how many home runs you get.
The outcome of the hit, yeah.
Yes. So if you hit nothing but home runs and you hit a home run every time you were pitched, your slugging percentage would be 4,000 and your batting average would be 1,000. As in, so 4 times that. And if you only hit doubles, it'd be 2,000. If you only hit triples, it'd be 3,000, and so on. So a really good slugging percentage is something over the 800 mark, and you're an absolute legend. I think, in short periods, people have hit over 1,000, like in World Series and stuff, which is just nuts. Then on base plus slugging is those two things combined. Runs batted in, how many times you hit your teammates in, basically, or how many times you runs you bat in
results in a run being scored.
So if you have if you hit a grand slam, which is when you have someone on every base and yourself scoring a run, so it's worth 4 runs. Basically, you clear the bases and yourself, that is worth 4 RBIs, basically. Mm-hmm. And there's stuff like stolen bases, obviously runs. Then pitching, you've got like strikeouts, earned run averages, wins and losses. This is a quite important one, actually. So it's a very old-fashioned measure of whether a pitcher's won or lost while they're in the game. Only one pitcher per game is awarded the win or awarded the loss,
right,
based on certain measures, and it's very complicated, this. Anyway, there's also one called wins above replacement, WAR, which is basically, I have no idea how it works, but it works out how many wins you personally have added to the team compared to an average replacement. So compared to like a bang average, like your standard major leaguer, how much having you in the team has contributed to your team as a percentage, and it's nuts. Anyway,
it's very interesting.
All day just talking about statistics.
No, but it is interesting because it's like that's the way the game went, and like, you know, you joked about how many Moneyball references will be, and that will be the reason that's significant though is because baseball wasn't always this statistical. Like not this statistical. Yeah. It was always a bit statistical, but not to this level. I've just talked about the common ones as stuff that goes way deeper. I mean, obviously Moneyball is like a Hollywood movie, and it's an exaggeration of reality, and it's not entirely accurate. It's obviously embellishments and things like that for dramatic effect. But the point it's making is that for a long time, baseball ignored people who were actually very valuable assets because it was unable to see through tradition and, linear thinking, like the value that someone was adding, because it was hidden in the statistics. And then they deconstructed the statistics, and they noticed that certain people, just because they had a dodgy technique or something like that, they were being underappreciated. Yeah. And so they build a team in the aggregate.
Yeah, exactly. Batting average used to be the big thing, and someone who's batting 225, but gets on base through other means just as often as they get a hit, has an on-base percentage of 450, and is incredibly useful to a team as a result of that. Just as an example, and that wasn't something that was taken into account. That is sort of the message that Moneyball specifically gets across in the simplest form, but it's all part of sabermetrics, as it's called.
Yeah.
Which is deep analytical thought about baseball, which it is evolving all the time, and constant new measures and new ways of looking at it. It becomes faddy as well, as these things often do in sport, that one person starts doing it and all of a sudden everyone starts doing it. I actually have a very good story, which I'll come to, about when that happened in baseball. One person started doing something and all of a sudden the entire game changed as a result of it. But we'll come to that. But first I have to talk about the history of baseball.
Well,
so I should explain today.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, like, we're talking about baseball because it's the playoffs.
Yes. I didn't even mention that yet.
The playoffs
are about
this
to start,
evening.
guys.
They start tonight.
Yes. Yeah, so tune in.
Yeah, and they'll be played all through October. The World Series is at the end of October. If it goes to 7, then it will be early November when it finishes. But yeah, maybe we'll finish on who's in it and that sort of thing. But that's why we're talking about it. We haven't just picked baseball out of thin air.
So October baseball hits different, and this is going to be, as we keep saying, we're going to be doing this podcast hopefully a long time. This time next season, I'm going to be talking about a lot more about October baseball. It's the first episode we've done on Major League Baseball. I am going to dive into the history of baseball a little bit. And everything I really talk about in depth, it's not going to get beyond the 1940s, really. And then in a future episode, I'll talk about more modern stuff. I did something similar for the NFL. But I think we need to set the stall out. We need to talk about where baseball came from and some of its early practitioners and why it has become, so where the World Series came from and why it's become the game it is today. So I'm not going to linger too much on the history, but it's going to seem like I am, but I'm not.
That's all right.
I'm not. There's a lot of it.
I'm always here for the ride. You know that.
Yeah, so anyway, to summarise really quickly, and this is not going to be really quick, but to summarise really quickly, the origins of baseball depend very much on how objective you want to be, basically, what origin story you believe. So games similar to baseball have been played since at least the Tudor times in England, basically rounders, essentially what we'd call nowadays.
Yeah, great sport.
Well, we played it at school, it was fun. It's a great feeling when you nail it, when you
That's what
really
I'm talking
balls
about
on.
with the
That's what
homers,
I mean,
mate.
Yeah.
Just bang.
Like, oh yeah, it's like that moment where it's like, oh shit, I've smashed, I've got to run. Yeah, anyway. Rounders itself was referred to as baseball, sometimes hyphenated, sometimes 2 words, sometimes 1 word, in the 18th century in England. But it should be said that the version that emerged in the second half of the 19th century in the United States was very different to that game. So I'm not putting this entirely on the English to have created it. It was very much adapted. So similar games made their way across the Atlantic in the 18th century, as did other sports, as did cricket. Actually, cricket was mildly popular in the United States for a while. By the mid-19th century, baseball was being played along a few distinct rules, the most notable split being New England and New York. There was like a Massachusetts version of the rules, and then a New York version of the rules. The first codified rules was in 1845, and that came out of New York. They were called the Knickerbocker Rules. They were named for the club that came up with them, and the club organizer was a man named Alexander Cartwright, who is genuinely and fairly called the father of baseball. There was other people who are called the father of baseball, who I will come to momentarily, where there's a bit less evidence to back up that particular claim. So the first rules differed a lot from modern rules. Overhand pitching was banned. Strikes were only awarded for swings and misses. There was no zone for balls at all, no zone for strikes. There was no zone at all. You just kept throwing it until they swung 3 times and missed, or until they got a hit in play. So games could take a long time. Games were often drawn, essentially, due to the light, as happens in cricket. The game also allowed catches on the first bounce, which is weird.
1 hand, 1 bounce.
But, no, well, 2 hands, 1 bounce. It's not quite 1 hand, 1 bounce, but I do like 1 hand, 1 bounce. Good rule, that.
2 hands,
Classic
1
school
bounce
row.
is easier, though.
I know, it's ridiculous. Well, they didn't have gloves in those days, so, give them some credit.
Jesus. Americans in their apparatus. Pads, helmets, gloves. Just catch the ball, man.
Some things have stayed the same, though. So from the original rules, 3 outs for an innings was there. Diamonds were pretty much the same size, and foul balls were already a thing at that point. And basically these became the standard laws which have been developed into the game that we know today. So that is what actually happened. But would you like to hear baseball's foundation myth because just like rugby and William Webb Ellis, they have a foundation myth to go along with what probably actually happened.
Yeah, of course. Mythology.
So the story goes...
Leads us into archery next week very nicely.
Indeed. The story goes that future, at this point, Civil War Union General Abner Doubleday invented baseball in Cooperstown in upstate New York, which I have been to, and in which now resides the Baseball Hall of Fame, which I have visited, and I would recommend the village of Cooperstown and the area around it to anyone, because it's a lovely place to visit, and I'm very, very pleased that I went and visited it on a grey, drizzly day in September last year. It was very, very good. But the reason the Hall of Fame is there is basically based on a big old myth. So the story goes that Abner Doubleday invented the game in Cooperstown, as I said, but that, as the origin of baseball, only became a thing in the early 1900s, which was after Doubleday's death, and was basically agreed by a group of baseball figures, as opposed to historians, in response to an actual historian who had made the claim that baseball had developed slowly and evolved from rounders, which is something you may have heard recently from me, because it's actually happened.
Yeah.
Which is obviously, it's a most un-American sport, so you can see why they did it. I can understand it. But nevertheless, if the result of it is that there's a wonderful Hall of Fame in a lovely village called Cooperstown, then that's fine. I can accept it, because it is a very nice place to visit.
And also, why let the truth get in the way of a good story?
Yeah, and that's actually going to become a bit of a theme of this, because there's a lot of stories about someone who I'm going to talk about later, who I don't know why I'm hiding who it's going to be, but we'll come to it. Everyone knows.
Yeah, I mean, he is the greatest baseball player of all time.
So early baseball was quite fraternal, it was quite civilized, precisely up to the point where it became popular, and rich folk realised there was money to be made from it. So the enclosure movement, as it became known, basically turned open ballparks as they were into closed stadiums, and that allowed the owners to charge fees for people getting in. Where have we heard this before? Thousands of times, all over the world. It's the same story. History just repeats itself.
The Benjamins.
Indeed. It happens everywhere, not just America, although they love it. So basically, in the following decade, up into the 1860s, the first professionalism came into the sport as a result. And so it's just an age-old tale, same as we've said. Better players mean more fans, means more money, means better players, means more fans, means more money, rinse, repeat, etc., etc. The game was originally very localized to New York and New England, but in another example of, good and bad things coming out of certain events, the US Civil War happened, and that meant... I know, good and bad things. One of the bloodiest wars in history. But baseball came out of it.
Well, look, that's what we always try and say, isn't it? But for.
So, obviously, all the soldiers in one place. They had a lot of time, a lot of ground to play games on, and the game that became most popular was baseball. And so, people bringing the rules in from New York showed the game to their comrades, and it spread, basically, as a result. That also helped secure the New York rules as the rules of the new, now national game, as it became. So, again, just like other sports we've covered, games were originally exhibition matches, but scheduling issues and the desire for consistent, high-quality opponents led to organisations and leagues to be formed. I should just record this once and just press play and just be like, This is the same in every league, every sport, all over the world.
People realise they like it, they want to do it more often, they want to do it organised, so they do organise it.
And they want the players to stop changing teams, and they want to have more control over the players.
Yeah.
And they want to stop the players changing teams. So they want to create a single organisation at the top with all the money concentrated in a few owners, and therefore the players don't have anywhere else to go, so they can afford to pay them less and make lots of money out of them. It's the same every time. So originally teams made a lot of money touring. The Cincinnati Red Stockings were the early dominant team doing this, and their popularity basically led to the creation of the first fully professional sports league in America in 1870, which was the National Association. That was succeeded in 1876 by the National League of Baseball, which remains in existence and is half of the Major League Baseball today, the National League, and is the oldest professional sports league in the world to this day, obviously, because if it wasn't still going, then it wouldn't be. So the NL succeeded where the NA failed, basically by limiting its membership and excluding some of the weaker teams, leading to a lot less variation in team ability and closer matchups. The Chicago White Stockings, and now the Chicago Cubs, won the inaugural 8-team season in 1876. And it worked especially well for the owners because, as I mentioned, it limited player power, it enforced contracts, it also improved baseball's image by excluding gambling and attempting to limit rowdy on-field behaviour, which did not last long, as in them trying to limit it. It came back very quickly. It also established territorial areas for clubs, again, a story we've heard before. It adopted something known as the reserve clause, which basically meant that once a team had you, you were tied to that team. Even if your contract expired, you couldn't leave. Very similar to what we mentioned before with association football. The National League established itself originally as the only major league of baseball. While other leagues existed, they were considered minor leagues on the back of an agreement made around this time. And for a while, none could compete with the National League. But the National League started developing a reputation for things it originally tried to limit: rowdiness, umpire abuse, drinking and gambling, all the good stuff. Baseball was being seen as a pastime not appropriate for women and children, and a man named Ban Johnson decided this needed to change. His Western League, which was a minor league that he'd taken charge of in 1894, offered a friendlier, more family-friendly alternative, and by the turn of the new century in 1900, it was the biggest minor league and was a genuine competitor by that point to the National League in terms of audience. To appeal to a wider audience, he changed the name in 1900 to the American League, having expanded aggressively into cities abandoned by the National League like Baltimore, Cleveland, Louisville, and Washington, D.C. And by the end of the 1900 season, the American League went into full war mode, withdrawing from the national agreement that governed what was a major and what was a minor league, and declaring themselves in 1901 a new major league. The National League responded completely idiotically by setting a new wage cap at $2,400 a season, which basically just meant the American League just had to offer $2,500 a season, and all of a sudden they had their free pick of players. Now they're outside of the agreement. And they did. They stole over 100 players from the National League, which, bear in mind, was only 8 teams at the time, so that's about half the bloody league.
Very familiar in American sports, just a ego off between two competing leagues.
It's not just American sports. There's a bit of it in football history as well.
Yeah,
in the UK.
But yeah, I'm going to hazard a guess, mate, because I obviously do know the outcome of this because it's the current format that they somehow reached an agreement.
The war ended in 1903, Ben, with the National League basically just waving the white flag and the American League officially being accepted as a major league. But the important thing about all this, Ben, guess what it led to? When you got the National League and the American League having their own champions at the end of the season, how do you decide who the world champions are?
You have a playoff.
World Series. You do. So originally it was a best of 9 series. It was, again, a best of 9 series, a few random scattered years, but usually, pretty much entirely, it's been a best of 7 series in the years since. So the 1903 season was the first time the World Series was played out between the two pennant winners, so basically the two champions of the American League and the National League, and it was won by the Boston Americans, now known as the Boston Red Sox, the American League champions who defeated the Pittsburgh Pirates by 5-3 in a best of 9 World Series. The Red Sox would win 4 more times in the 1910s, most recently in 1918, or for the last time then in 1918, and then something happened, and they didn't win again for a while, and I'm just going to tee you up for various things now, Ben. So would you like to take the reins of the story and let me catch my bloody breath and tell us about some curses in the game of baseball?
Mate, I love the curses in baseball.
I love curses.
It's like
so much.
They're obviously made up.
They are.
And like completely not real. Point. But it's besides the point. The circumstances are such that you could easily believe that they're real. As you've just mentioned, the Red Sox flew out the gates when it came to the World Series, and one of the greatest rivalries in sport, not just in baseball, in sport, is the rivalry between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees.
Oh, yes.
The Red Sox were one of the most successful professional baseball franchises from the get-go, and as you said, they won 5. They won in 1903, and then they won, I don't know when their second one was, but then they won 1915, 1916, and 1918. I think
there was one about 1911, 1912 time, but
yeah,
they won like 4 times in the 1910s.
But the important thing is that they were really good, and by contrast,
the best team arguably.
Yeah, and by contrast, the Yankees were pretty average. In fact, the Yankees had not played in a World Series up until that point. During this period, this is important, a guy called Harry Frazee bought the Boston Red Sox for a sizable sum back in the day, $675,000 and he did so
That
after.
was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, he did so after their victory in 1916, and obviously, as we say, the Red Sox won another title in 1918. But then in 1919, they finished sixth overall because it was set up ever so slightly differently, as you've obviously already mentioned. Like the playoff system, as is currently conventionally known, wasn't applicable back in the day. And Phrase, I think it's Frazee or Phrase.
Crazy, I think.
Frazee, yeah, started selling players to the Yankees. Now, this stinks of crap because Frazee basically had connections with the owners of the New York Yankees and was big on like Broadway. He was like an agent and he sort of funded various shows and things like that. And he
producer, basically.
Yeah, he wasn't particularly good with the money for the Red Sox. And what he basically did was start offloading players almost like exclusively to the Yankees. Not entirely, but almost exclusively. And was using the money generated from player sales and the remortgaging of Fenway Park to finance theatre productions. And as part of that strategy, he decided to sell a chap called Babe Ruth from the Boston Red Sox.
Quite famous.
to the Yankees. And it is probably the most infamous trade. It's certainly in baseball history. It's one of the most infamous trades, or transfers, for want of a better phrase, outside of American sports, in sports history. It's up there with, in terms of controversy, not in terms of talent, like Figo going from Barcelona.
I knew you were going to say Figo. I was like, poised. I was like, yeah, Figo. Yes, good call.
It's because, that level of rivalry is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it did not serve the Red Sox particularly well. No. They bombed, essentially. And I don't think they had what the Americans would call a winning season until 1934.
No, they came last most of the time.
Yeah.
In that period.
Yeah, they were useless. And by contrast, Babe Ruth...
By contrast.
and the New York Yankees did rather well and actually became the most dominant professional sports franchise ever?
Ever.
yeah.
Certainly in American history, yeah.
Yeah, winning more than twice as many World Series titles as any other Major League Baseball team. In fact, the Yankees now played in 39 World Series. Well, they're playing 41 now, I think. They've won 26 of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, their fortunes improved rather drastically. The Red Sox, however, would be cursed, and it would become known as the curse of the Bambino. They would play in 4 World Series in the intervening period, but they would lose all of them in 7, which is brutal in itself.
Yeah.
In 1946, they lost to St. Louis. The Cardinals. The winning run is alleged to have been scored due to Boston shortstop Johnny Pesky hesitating in a relay throw to home plate, which he, I think, has always denied that he hesitated, or the sun got in his eyes, or something.
Not the worst moment that they would have in this period.
No, but it's a precursor, which is why I mention it. Because this is why you believe in the curse, because sport, mate.
Yeah.
67, again, they made it to the World Series and they lost in 7 again to the Cardinals. And then in 75, they lost to Cincinnati Reds in 7, in one of the greatest World Series ever, actually. There was a walk-off home run to take it to 7 by the Red Sox, so you could have thought their fortunes were turning, but then they blew a 3-0 lead in the final game. As you said, these 3 previous defeats were not the worst of their problems.
No.
1986 probably represents the Boston Red Sox lowest ebb.
It's so bad. Honestly, when you hear this, just go and Google it. It's so bad.
Yeah, and when you watch it as well, it's just awful. In Game 6 of the World Series against the New York Mets, Boston were leading the series 3-2, and they took a 5-3 lead in the top of the 10th innings.
So see it out and the game's over, basically.
Yeah. Red Sox reliever Calvin...
literally, see it out and the game's over.
Schiraldi retired the first 2 batters, putting the team within 1 out, and shortly within 1 strike... of winning the World Series. However, the Mets scored 3 runs. So they scored 2 runs tying the game on a wild pitch from Bob Stanley, and then winning it when, oh my God, Boston's first baseman Bill Buckner allowed a ground ball hit by the Mets' Mookie Wilson to roll through his legs. Ah, God. And Ray Knight scored from second base to take it to Game 7. And then in Game 7, the Red Sox took a 3-0 lead, only to lose 8-5. Oh, my God, mate, the pain.
Cursed.
Yeah,
They're cursed.
They're cursed.
There's no other explanation.
The collapse.
It's like Mayo, man.
Well, this is the thing. This was the first reference to them officially being cursed, because it was after that game the New York Times columnist George Vesky wrote articles describing the Red Sox as cursed. And you can see why. I mean, how is your luck?
Yeah.
And it's the ground ball to Bill Buckner is the really famous thing, because it's just when the tide turned completely in that series. It's heartbreaking to watch it. And there's been like interviews with him and stuff, and you can tell it just haunts him like it would. Yeah. Anyway, they haven't always just chucked the World Series. They've chucked the American League a few times as well, including blowing a 14-game lead in the American League East to lose to the Yankees in a single-game playoff and then go out. A collapse which included the Boston Massacre, where the Yankees won. They swept them at Fenway Park 4-0 in a series with a combined score of 42-9.
Jeez, it's a fair title then.
And so it's long noted that the selling of Ruth is the beginning of the decline. But the term "the curse of the Bambino" wasn't in common use until the publication of a book called "The Curse of the Bambino" by Dan Shaughnessy in 1990. This is what I love about baseball, and this is, your comparisons to football are so apt, because like I was looking into sort of how did the people of Boston take the curse? Not well.
Yes.
So like Shaughnessy's book was on the curriculum for school in English in New England.
What?
And then,
like, this is what we have to educate our young people about.
Yeah. And then they were obviously taunted by Yankees fans, like everywhere they went, like chants of 1918. The Yankees also, they were selling merch and all sorts, like T-shirts with 1918 on it or the curse on it. They held up pictures of Babe Ruth. This only really happened at Yankee Stadium as well. Like, it's not like the league, it's not like everyone in the league was taunting the Red Sox, but the Yankees obviously relished it. I love this. A reverse curve road sign on the Longfellow Bridge over the city's Story Drive was graffitied to read "Reverse the Curse," and officials just left it like that.
Uh-huh.
And that's like a warning sign. So, I just think that's funny. And there were plenty of attempts to obviously exercise the curse, including this is so bizarre. Placing a Boston Red Sox cap on top of Mount Everest.
Nice.
And burning a Yankees cap at base camp. Finding the piano.
Definitely, yeah.
I'll
do it.
Finding the piano owned by Babe Ruth that he supposedly pushed into a pond near his Sudbury, Massachusetts home plate farm. God. I mean, like they just went to a lot of lengths to try and switch their fortunes, and obviously
I really hope this story has a happy ending.
I mean, well, mate, first of all, we'll get to that. But Bill Lee, a former Red Sox pitcher, suggested that the Red Sox should exhume the body of Babe Ruth, transport it back to Fenway Park, and publicly apologize to him for trading him to the Yankees. I mean, people were losing their minds.
And then presumably publicly apologize to him for digging
up his dead body. But something was
which
afoot.
I feel is a worse crime than trading him.
Yes. I mean, an actual criminal offence.
Yes, literally. Quite literally.
But yes, something was afoot, Jack. Something was afoot. And in 2004, there was a sense of something. And it all started with a 16-year-old having his teeth knocked out. So,
as all the best stories do.
Yeah. In a game in August 2004, Manny Ramirez hit a foul ball which flew into Section 9, Box 95, Row AA, and struck a child in the face, knocking his teeth out. That 16-year-old child was a chap called Lee Gavin, who was a Boston fan, whose favourite player was Ramirez, and he happened to live on the Sudbury farm owned by Ruth, where he had pushed his piano into the pond.
Fair enough.
The same day, the Yankees suffered their worst loss in team history, a 22-0 smashing by the Cleveland Indians. And
nice.
Other things started to suggest a more positive tone. There was a comedy sketch, a curse-breaking ceremony performed by musician Jimmy Buffett. And
Right, yeah. I knew he'd be involved in the story some point.
And his warm-up team, one dressed as Ruth and one dressed as a witch doctor, performed at Fenway Park in September 2004. Yeah, just after being traded by the Red Sox, Curt Schilling appeared in an advertisement, traded to the Red Sox, rather, I should say, not traded by. Curt Schilling appeared in an advert for a Ford F-150 pickup truck, hitchhiking with a sign that indicated he was off to Boston. And when he was picked up, in the advert he said he had an 86-year-old curse to break. And then the curse, finally, was reversed and broken in 2004, the end of 2004 season. But it came in the most fucking spectacular of circumstances.
That American League Championship Series is a thing of beauty.
God, I mean, there's a documentary on it now on Netflix, which you and I have watched.
Yes.
And it is, just watch it. It's so good. It's scarcely believable. So they're up against the Yankees of all teams. So the Yankees and Boston are in the same thing. They never meet in the World Series, basically. It's not possible. So they always come up against each other in the American League Championship game. The Red Sox were losing 3-0 and 4-3
in the series.
Yeah, 3-0 in the series and 4-3 in Game 4 when they when they tied the game to sort of further innings, and then they go on to win it when David Ortiz hits an absolute bomb in the 12th. So 3-1, no problem. You're thinking, is there anything to write home about? Well, yeah, because they go on and win it 4-3. They're the first, and as of last year, still the only team to have ever won a best-of-7 playoff series after losing the first 3 games. They then played...
And this is
go on.
Including winning the last 2 games at Yankee Stadium as well.
Yeah.
Which has got to feel good.
Oh, that must have felt... It's like what dreams are made of. I'm not sure I'd want to wait 86 years for it, but...
No.
But maybe I would. I don't know. That is the peak of... That's perfect, isn't it? Like, it's perfect.
And the great thing about baseball is there's probably someone in that stadium who was there in 1918 as well as a 10-year-old or something like that, who's now 96. Or at the very least, I mean, there'll be plenty of people whose fathers, mothers, parents, brothers, uncles, whatever, would have been there as well. And the stories get passed down. It means a lot. Certainly a lot of people who've been there in 1986.
God, mate. Sport, like... They played St. Louis Cardinals, who's the team they'd lost to in 46 and 67, and they smashed them to win
just
it.
Swept them.
Yeah. And Cardinals shortstop Edgar Renteria was wearing the number 3, which was Babe Ruth's number, and he was the final out of the series. A ground ball back to pitcher Keith Falk, and as it's thrown in, Fox commentator Joe Buck famously calls, "Back to Falk. Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. The Boston Red Sox are world champions."
Shiver down the spine.
God. And then if you want just a nice little thing, the World Series, after that World Series, the road sign I was talking about.
Yeah.
It was edited to reversed curse.
Excellent.
So yes, baseball, sport.
It's impossible not to be romantic about it,
Both
sport and baseball.
That story, the reason me and you have said this before, that story is it almost encapsulates every single element of why me and you will wax lyrical about sport and get teary-eyed about it. And it's because that has all the heartbreak, it has prolonged disappointment, and then it has a series of events so unlikely to occur in order to result
to one team,
in order for you to win, that if you wrote it in a book as a fictional story, people would probably dismiss it as outlandish and therefore rubbish,
and rightly so. Yeah.
So it's so unlikely to happen and so out there. Then I can't even believe it. That's the point. It's actually unbelievable unless it happens.
And it did.
And it did. It's so good.
Oh.
So good, man. Yes.
And like all the pieces were there before the finale happened. It's not like it was pieced together afterwards, if that makes sense. Like the curse was there and they were talking about breaking it, and then the kid was smashed up, and it's just a great part of the story, to be fair.
And I know you look closely enough, you'll see you can draw links and parallels to things, and that's what we mean about, like, you know, it's just probabilities, and they weren't really cursed, but the maths is so it's so unlikely. Like
it is.
It's hard not to believe that like other influences are at play when things like that happen.
And it happens a lot. There's times where things feel inevitable, and then they happen, and it feels like, well, of course it was always going to happen. That was fate. This is what, you know, life has been leading up to. This is what this moment has been leading up to. We've felt it in sport before, I'm sure, either as a spectator or as a participant, like the inevitability.
Istanbul, for you.
Istanbul, yeah, as a really good example. It's like, well, of course we were going to win that. Why would we not have won that? But then it's such a horrendously unlikely position to be in. And even like when we were playing rugby, like you know, for years it was like just going to go the season unbeaten, and we did.
Yeah.
And it's like that's crazy, but it feels inevitable at the end of it.
That's the cool thing. Like, I mean, like plugging ourselves there a bit, but this is the thing that's so beautiful about sport, is that it does happen at every level. Like these wonderful little things that, like they're overcoming adversity and stuff. You don't have to be a world champion. Like it can be your local team hasn't won in ages, or they do something that's, you know, insane. Or like, it's beautiful, mate.
And ultimately, although, you know, you might be a Yankees fan and that particular story means nothing to you, and the stories that, you know, you care about might be in the past more, but it doesn't. If you like sport enough, and if you embrace sport enough and enjoy sports at any levels and really put your heart into it and have this emotional bond with the teams you follow or the players you play with or wherever it might be, it will happen. It'll happen small or big or something. It will happen. You'll have that moment. You will. It's very unlikely that you can follow sport for your entire life and not end up with one of these moments. It might not be your baseball team, or it might not be your, you know, whatever the team you play on necessarily. Just embrace sport and give your whole heart to it, and it will happen eventually. It will.
No, I agree. Like, and the Boston Red Sox,
Thierry Henry coming back and scoring against Leeds. It will happen.
Don't. You'll upset me, in a good way. But no, like this Red Sox story is just like, it is, you know, like the Everest of sporting achievement on the back of adversity and disappointment and hopelessness. Like, there'll be people that would have,
good word.
People that would have been Red Sox fans that had been watching them for 50, 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
Who probably had resigned themselves to the fact that they were never going to see the Red Sox win the World Series. And then to do it like that, I mean, if those of the older generation, how they didn't die of a heart attack in that American League Championship game and they got through it is, you know, a miracle in itself.
That's a medical marvel, that is.
Yeah, mate. The Boston Red Sox, I mean, they are one of the most iconic teams in baseball. Their ground is a thing of beauty. It's on my bucket list to go to Fenway Park.
Oh, we have to. I think we should. It's not actually expensive to get to Boston, but that's another conversation.
The Green Monster, and it's
get Sam involved.
Ivory, and I just want to go.
We will.
So yeah, where can you take? Because I mean, I could talk about curses. I got like, but you probably want to talk about Babe Ruth.
I do want to talk about Babe Ruth, and I will talk about Babe Ruth. There's only one other thing I was going to talk about, really, and that was the biggest scandal in baseball's history, which happened in the World Series. And I will go over this quicker than I intended to, because your story was marvellous, but I'm wary about that 2-hour limit we have at this point, and especially because there's a lot of Babe Ruthing to do. This is the 1919 World Series, so obviously we're going back in history, over 100 years now, but it is, in my opinion, I struggle to think of anything in the history of sport as dark and scandalous as this. It is incredible to think how the single pinnacle of a sport, the sport of baseball, is winning the World Series. Like, as much as we mock it for calling it the World Championship, it has been the pinnacle of baseball for since baseball was a thing. It is everything. And to think that people would deliberately lose it in return for money, and not, well, a decent amount of money at the time, but not a huge amount of money in sort of modern terms when you look at it, is incredible. But the 1919 World Series started on October the 1st, 1919, and it was between the National League champions, the Cincinnati Reds, and the American League champions, the Chicago White Sox. It was one of only 4 World Series, as I mentioned, held over 9 games, so it's a best-of-9 format here, obviously to give more opportunities for fans to watch matches, but mainly to generate more revenue. That's why it was changed.
The Benjamins.
It was, yeah. So the White Sox were a team who'd had a good season. Obviously, they got to the World Series. They must have had a good season, but they weren't happy as a team. They weren't happy with the management. They felt they were being underpaid, even though at that point they were the best paid team in the American League, but they still felt they were being underpaid. They also felt players were being denied chances to make bonuses that they thought they were contractually due. Most notably, pitcher Eddie Seacott, who had been removed from what would have been his usual starting spot in the pitching rotation for the last 2 weeks of the season, when he was on 29 wins, and he had a clause in his contract where his 30th win would have been a $10,000 bonus, which is about $185,000 in today's money. Now, bear in mind at this point, players were generally only paid about $5,000 a season in Major League Baseball. As I mentioned, they had this reserve clause, which stopped players going off and seeking free agency as they would nowadays, and kept wages low as a result. So $10,000 was nothing short, and it was basically just stolen off him as far as they were concerned. The star of this team was a man named Shoeless Joe Jackson, so named because of an incident in his youth where his new shoes were blistering his feet so badly he went out shoeless, and as these things tend to do, the name stuck. And their owner, Charles Comiskey, was regarded as a miser, and they regarded him as having underpaid the team, even though, as I mentioned, they were actually quite well paid on the average. So it was a sport making the owners into millionaires, but it wasn't making the players into millionaires for the most part. Most were paid about $5,000 a year, which was about $90,000 in today's money. So not a bad salary, but for a professional sport making a lot of money, not a lot. So as a result, it was a sport where it was rife basically to be targeted by organised crime to fix matches for gambling. And in this case, first baseman Chick Gandil of the White Sox, he was one of the players on about $5,000 a year, and he was approached by a bookmaker named Joe Sports Sullivan, as he was known. And between them, they agreed a fee of $80,000 to be shared between as many players as required to fix the series, basically. So again, $80,000, not a huge amount of money, even in today's terms. So 2 days later, a group of players met in Gandal's hotel room, and most of them agreed to go along with the plot. It should be noted Shoeless Joe was not amongst their number at this point, but crucially, 2 pitchers were. Eddie Seacott being one of them, and a man named Lefty Williams, obviously a left-handed pitcher, that was a nickname. The team's best pitcher was a man named Red Faber. He was a very straight-laced man who would never have gone along with this, but fortunately for the plot, he was injured, so he wasn't going to take part in the series. Before a pitch was even thrown in the series, rumours started going around that it was going to be fixed, and a lot of bets started coming in from the Reds even before the series started, and newspapermen picked up on this, and rumours began to circulate. So Eddie Seacott was on the mound for the opener. He hit the Reds batter Maury Raff with his second pitch of the game, which was a prearranged signal, basically signalling to the co-conspirators that the players were in on it, and they were going to go ahead with this. Seacott had an awful game. He whiffed on an easy double play, which was noted in the press as suspicious, and Cincinnati won the first game 9-1. Lefty Williams pitched the second. Cincinnati won, obviously, to go 2-0 up. At this point, a rookie took over the pitching, a man named Dickie Kerr. He wasn't in on the fix, and the Sox won that game. So it was 2-1 in the series. But then Seacott came back for the fourth, and Williams came back for the fifth, so it was 4-1 at that point to the Cincinnati Reds, and this is why I mentioned it's the best of 9, so the series isn't over at that point. And then Dickie Kerr pitched the sixth, and it was 4-2. So basically, it was going exactly as you'd expect. When the dodgy pitchers pitched, they were losing, and when the good pitchers pitched, they were winning at this point. However, ahead of Game 7, things took a turn. As of this point, no White Sox players had seen any money, so they basically tried to double-cross the people in charge of this scandal, and they upped their efforts, and they actually won with Seacott on the mound Game 7 to pull the series back to 4-3. At this point, Sullivan sent thugs round to Lefty Williams and threatened to essentially beat the shit out of his wife, or possibly worse, if Game 8 went Chicago's way. So, unsurprisingly, Williams started off very poorly, and he was hooked pretty quickly. but had already given the Reds an insurmountable lead. And with it, they sealed the game and the series 5-3. And that was it for a while, at least. The players were paid about $5,000 each. Again, about $90,000 in today's money. It's not a huge amount of money, but when you're paid as little as they were, relatively speaking, it was a year's salary for most of them. And Gandil, who was the organiser, he got $35,000, which, to be fair, was quite a lot of money. Rumours still persisted. It became a bit of a hot topic, and other people were being accused of it too, not just the White Sox. So about a year later, the White Sox were in a battle with the Cleveland Indians for the American League pennant at the end of the 1920 season, when a grand jury had been convened to investigate the matter. The players were questioned, and Seacott was the one who cracked, admitting his part in the fix. So the players were implicated and were immediately banned by Comiskey, the team owner, which effectively ended the White Sox chances, but he said he had no choice in the matter. The grand jury eventually implicated 8 players, one of which was Shoeless Joe Jackson. So, Shoeless Joe Jackson there's an apocryphal story about him leaving the courthouse and a young child coming up to him and saying, "Say it ain't so, Joe," to which he sorrowfully replies, "Yes, kid, I'm afraid it is." He admitted to receiving money, but he denied doing anything to act on it, and his stats in the series suggest he didn't, because he topped the batting with he was batting .375 with 1 home run, so pretty good batting performance. It's been alleged that most of his offences came in sort of dead games, games that had already been thrown or whatever else, but it's been debated for years whether he actually had a part in it, and he was famously illiterate as well, and there's a suggestion that he just signed the confession essentially not knowing what it was, and various other things. So a lot of people have been campaigning for Jackson for years and saying that maybe he didn't have a part in it.
Why would you get the money though?
Apparently, there's rumours that he got offered the money, refused the money, and then the money basically got thrown in his hotel room and left, but he didn't use it or something. Anyway, he may or may not have been implicated. I'm not claiming his innocence. I'm not claiming his guilt on the matter. But there's a lot there's debate over it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jackson and 7 others, including Seacott, received lifetime bans given by the brand new Commissioner of Baseball. Baseball had basically brought in a commissioner post for the first time, and it was a wonderfully named federal judge called Kennesaw Mountain Landis, which is one of the best names I've ever heard in my life. He negotiated himself almost infinite power within the sport in basically with a view of cleaning up baseball. And one of the first acts he did was to place all 8 on the ineligible list. They were Chick Gandil, Eddie Seacott, Oscar Felsch, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Fred McMullen, Charles Reisberg, George Weaver, and Lefty Williams. They remained on the ineligible list until long after their deaths, with current Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred symbolically removing all deceased players from that particular list only in May this year. So they never played baseball again, any of them. So that was the end of that particular scandal. And yeah.
Mate,
stinks.
Scandalous is right. Like,
they threw the World Series. It's incredible.
That's an insane story. Like, it's disgraceful, shameful, outrageous. I was wondering though, like, I was toying with it as you were telling me it, because I was sort of thinking to myself, like, okay, like, you know, they got an issue with the pay and blah blah blah. Like, do we have any sympathy with them from the perspective of like the actual or perceived unfairness? You know, the monetary divide. And then I very quickly, as you were telling the story, came down on the fence of no, because what really irks about that is you've taken you've taken other people's dreams away there was no option for them to win. Like, you can refuse to play. Like,
yes.
And then weaken the side, but they still have the chance to win. Like, all the other people still can live out their dreams legitimately. All the fans still have the hope that their side can win. But predetermining it because of your own arrogance and for your own gain.
Yeah.
Unforgivable.
No.
Unforgivable in a sporting context.
I completely agree. And the pitchers obviously have the power, so much power, to dictate what happens in a game, which is why it was so crucial to the plot that they got 2 pitchers on board, and also they lost another pitcher who definitely wouldn't have been in on it. So I can't think of anything worse, and I'm sure there probably has been comparable scandals. There may even have been other World Series that were thrown, or other big matches in baseball that were thrown, because it was quite rife at the time. But that, in terms of the guilt being established, it being beyond question, and I mean, quite rightly, they were all banned for life. Obviously, you can say what you want about Joe Jackson and, you know, whether he was guilty or not, but regardless, it's that is probably the biggest scandal
Still-
I think I can think of in sport.
Number one rule, isn't it? Like, you don't predetermine the outcome.
Yeah,
I
agree.
It's fair competition, always. Now, if you want to take a stand and go on strike or, whatever, like, no problem. But, like, don't deny other people, like, their dreams
Yeah,
and
it's
their
perfectly-
opportunities.
It's perfectly possible to say the players should have been paid more.
Yes.
And the league should have taken that into account because of the risk of match fixing.
It's a legitimate
being so rife.
grievance. It's a legitimate grievance. It's an illegitimate means of dealing with that grievance.
Yeah. Same reason why I think referees in the Premier League should be paid a lot of money, because it dissuades them from, getting their money elsewhere by whatever means. And we won't go down that particular rabbit hole. Just pay them the money because they have so much at stake. And in this case, in baseball, you have the entire... You brought the game into disrepute because you're not prepared to pay, or you've created a system where they can't be fairly recompensed.
It's never about the money
ridiculous.
either. Like, I know
It's respect.
I know you have to. We live in the real world, right? Like, so like, let's not get too idealistic about it. But sport at its core is that you don't play it for the money. You play it for the glory, and you play it for the competition, and you play it for fun. First and foremost, and like, the idea that you like weaponize that for your own personal gain is like, it undermines the very core principles of sport. That is an outrageous thing. Like, it's kind of topical because we were talking about the Ryder Cup, and it's like the Americans are getting paid, and it's like, what? Like, you're getting paid to do what? Like, you're millionaires, and you're getting battered. Like, so it's like
yeah.
It's because
in the time I was talking there, we've added another point on.
I had another two, but we're flying, mate. But the point is you're placing, you're deprioritizing and like the fundamentals. If you and you're placing an emphasis in the wrong place if you're putting it in monetary terms. Like, if the American team, for example, in the Ryder Cup are so concerned with money before they are winning, then the chances are they're going to undermine their chances of winning. And I think like it's the same here, but obviously on a more scandalous and improper scale. Like,
yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It's a very interesting story.
It's a very,
and obviously I skimmed through it a bit, but
yeah.
There's a bit of depth I cut out because
not the only team in Chicago that's had a bad time. Have I got time to flirt with the curse of the Billy Goat before Babe Ruth ends us on a happy note?
Yeah, probably got time. I mean, it's going to be 2 hours long regardless, but yeah, I've probably got time.
I'll skip.
I can make Babe Ruth last as long or as short as I want.
I'll do the curse of Billy Goat quickly because it is topical, because it is Chicago again.
And it spoiler alert, good ending.
Yeah, great ending.
The best ending, in my humble opinion.
The commentary.
I have a real soft spot for the Chicago Cubs because of this.
The commentary is the thing that that gets me. Actually, like the first time I saw a clip and heard a particular line, it like made me well up. It's so beautiful.
It's iconic, yeah.
Yeah, so we go back to 1943, and William Billy Goat Sianis, a Greek immigrant and a Chicago Cubs fan, bought the Lincoln Tavern near Chicago Stadium for $205 with a bounced check, which I think is a bold move.
Nice.
He then used the proceeds from his first weekend of opening to fulfill the payment. So pretty cavalier approach to business, but paid off. And then the following year, and this is all relevant background. The following year, that the Republican National Convention came to town, and Sianis posted a sign saying "No Republicans allowed," because he was because he was a Democrat, causing the place to be packed with Republicans, demanding his service, as is the way with these things. And obviously it was all a publicity stunt, a very smart move. Commercially, he used it to his advantage. He grew his brand and therefore his wealth. And the following year, he had bought a ticket in a box to Game 4 of the 1945 World Series, a game at Wrigley Field against the Detroit Tigers. And he took his pet goat with him. And
as you do,
despite the fact that he was now a very wealthy local businessman, and despite the fact he had obviously paid a handsome sum for some box seat tickets, Cubs owner Philip K. Wrigley, allegedly ejected him and his goat due to complaints from the other fans and perhaps the goat's odour.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
We can only speculate.
We can only speculate. Yeah, I'm sure it's a very clean goat. Sianis reacted very poorly to the suggestion that he would be ejected from Wrigley Field and basically said on his way out that there will never be another World Series game played there. Or I think the particular line was, "Them Cubs, they ain't gonna win no more." His family...
It's not about how you word the curse, it's how it
delivered.
How you feel when you're giving it.
Yeah. How much spite is there in it? Vitriol. And his family, Sianis' family also say that once he got back to his bar, he dispatched a telegram to Mr. Wrigley that read, "You're going to lose this World Series and you're never going to win another one again. You're never going to win a World Series again because you insulted my goat." And he wasn't.
Fair enough.
He wasn't wrong. So the Cubs lost the 1945 World Series to the Detroit Tigers. They also didn't win another league title. Again, all the World Series until 2016. 71 years. Yeah, a long barren run. And like the Boston Red Sox fans, the Chicago Cubs fans went to great lengths to try and overturn the curse of the Billy Goat.
I imagine they did.
Including Mr. Sianis himself, who attempted to lift the curse. He obviously regretted placing a curse on his beloved Cubs. And then his nephew took on the mantle and had been to the stadium several times with goats in an attempt to break it,
obviously,
including on the opening day.
Very clean goats.
Of the 1984 season and again in 1989. Both years the Cubs did go on to win their division, but were unable to break the curse. He also did the same thing to try and stop a losing streak, and for a wild card tiebreaker game, which the Cubs won, they got in a Greek Orthodox priest to try and break the curse for the 2008 playoffs, spraying holy water in and around the Cubs dugout. The most perverse aspect of this is that several goats have been sacrificed during those long 71 years. I mean, that's pretty.
And you're saying that didn't work?
Yeah, I know. And frustration, this is where sport really doesn't cover itself in glory sometimes. Frustration at attempts to break the curse probably most infamously boiled over in 2003 when a fan, Steve Bartman, was subject to some awful
this is crazy
abuse. Yeah, it's known as the Steve Bartman incident, who, by all accounts, and having read about him a little bit on the internet, is an incredibly nice man, and I can state unequivocally.
I think that there were regrets, not by him, as in by the people that gave him abuse later on.
There should be, man. Like, he unequivocally did not deserve what happened to him. So,
no,
because all he did was he caught a foul ball during Game 6 of the National League Championship Series against the Marlins, and the Cubs were 3-2 up in the series and 3-0 up in the game. And it prevented a second out of the Marlins' 8th innings. So had it been caught, it would have put the Cubs on the cusp, basically, of getting through to the World Series. And they didn't make the catch. They would have needed 4 more outs, basically. They would have needed 3 outs in the 9th, and they would have needed 1 more. And obviously, when you got 2 outs, no one on base, you're a strong position pitching-wise. What actually happened is the Cubs had a full-scale meltdown, and they lost the game 8-5. Bartman was subjected to such terrible abuse and threats, he was ultimately escorted out of the stadium by security for his own safety, during which another fan poured beer all over him. Marlins fans, obviously, I don't know if this was just to wind up Cubs fans or whether or not it was just genuinely out of compassion, but they started basically doing what was effectively crowdfunding and sent him loads of donations and to give him support and this, that and the other. He gave it all to charity. He didn't take a single penny. He turned down interviews and appearances and stayed out of the limelight and basically didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And lived a quiet life. He had an agent, obviously, because he was getting so much, I say agent, a representative of sorts, because he was getting so much attention. 2016, though, comes along. It's 13 years later, so Bartman is, he's not held responsible for the entire 13 years, but, that legacy never really heals fully, because, obviously, the Cubs still don't win. 2016, the Cubs ended the 2016 with 103 wins and 58 losses. Their first 100-win season since 1935, their best since 1910, and only their 6th 100-win season in their franchise. The Cubs then won the National League Championships series, their first league championship for 71 years, with a 5-0 shutout in Game 6 against the Dodgers at Wrigley Field. That's when officially, I guess, the curse was broken, and it was the 46th anniversary of Billy Cianis' death. The Cubs would then go on to beat the Cleveland Indians in the 2016 World Series in 7 games. After
ridiculous World Series.
Yeah.
Possibly the best ever.
Yeah. After trailing in the series 3-1, they won Game 7, 8-7 in the 10th innings. In Cleveland, Ohio.
As referenced in the intro.
Yeah, away, ending a 108-year drought on the 46th anniversary. God. Broken, yeah.
It is impossible not to be romantic about baseball.
Yes, it's beautiful, mate. And then the clip that I've seen, the one that I was going to tell you about, is the commentator going, "And the Cubs have finally won it all." And then
that's so good.
And then it cuts to a kid in the crowd who is like overwhelmed with joy. He's ecstatic and he's just bawling his eyes out. And it is incredible. If you need 3 seconds to just illustrate like what sport can do to a person, like just look at that and like tell me you don't feel something.
And I think they involved Steve Bartram in this somehow as well.
Mate, it's beautiful. So the owners of the Chicago Cubs, they send him a championship ring.
Oh, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the only thing he accepted. And he's obviously he basically released a statement saying it's like going to be cherished forever by his family, and he's absolutely delighted as anyone that the Cubs have won. But yeah, it's the only thing he ever accepted, and it's also just a lovely touch from the Cubs to do that. Yeah, like mate, like Chicago.
That's fantastic.
Both ends of the spectrum in Chicago.
Yeah, there you go. There was actually there's a Black Sox curse as well, which I don't know if you looked into, but that basically as punishment for their sins, it took them 85 years or whatever it was, 86 years to win another world title. But I would have thought personally they deserve longer than that. But I guess 86 years is enough.
Yeah. I think the Cleveland Indians
71 years for a goat, apparently.
Cleveland Guardians, formerly the Indians, they actually are the only team left that are subject to a curse, the curse of Rocky Colavito, which is basically a very similar story to the curse of the Bambino. They traded somebody that was very popular amongst the fan base, but he wasn't the Bambino.
He wasn't the Bambino, yeah.
Who was the Bambino? Tell us about the man himself.
I think I have to set context up here because baseball was a very, very different sport in the first 20 years, just under 20 years of the 20th century. So 1900, once the leagues essentially merged, and it didn't really merge, but once the American League was in the league for the first 18, 19 years, it was very tactical, very pitcher dominated. Players rarely swung hard through the ball. They tend to punch at it, almost chop at it, try and just get singles, just get on base for any means, obviously take walks, get hit by pitch, get on base for any means, chop it through the gaps. Once they were on base, there was a lot of base stealing, a lot of sacrifice bunting, a lot of hit and runs, a lot of deeply tactical baseball.
A bit like American football's transition. It was like a purely running game.
Yeah, very much. I mean, basically, it's actually quite an interesting sport in that small changes to the rules or the way the game is played or the equipment or whatever can make a huge difference. Like widening the base size, for example, increases the size of the strike zone and gives pitchers an advantage again, which means, statistically speaking, it becomes a bit more cerebral for the batsman. They have to steal more bases and they have to do more tactical things like sacrifice bunts and stuff. It's a weird game how it works like that. It's very interesting, but it began to change at the end of the 1910s, so around 1918, 1919. And there was a few reasons suggested for that. The first one was there was a change in the ball design. There's new stitching and cork interior. Potentially made the ball a bit more hittable. Secondly, there was a ban on spitballs and other so-called trick pitches. And spitball is basically just like in cricket, using saliva to change the profile of the ball and make it act slightly differently in the air. Basically, there was a ban on them. Thirdly, and quite tragically, actually, On August the 16th, 1920, Ray Chapman of the Cleveland Indians was hit in the head by a fastball thrown by Yankees pitcher Cole Mays. He never woke up. He died the following morning. He remains the only player to die from an injury in a Major League Baseball game, and his death was blamed in part on the discoloration of the balls. So basically, at this point, they were only using sort of a handful of balls per game, and the balls would quickly become discoloured through obviously soil and also like tobacco that the players were chewing and obviously using their saliva on it, which is kind of gross, or licorice that they were chewing, and it would quickly darken the balls, and obviously it would be advantageous to the pitchers for the balls to be darker. They were hard to pick out, but it was deemed to have had a significant impact on this tragic incident. So it immediately led to umpires basically changing the ball every time it got discoloured, so a lot more ball changes. And if you watch modern baseball, basically any time the ball hits the dirt, they get a new one. They go through dozens and dozens of balls in the game, so the balls are always bright and white. Weirdly, it did take 30 years for batting helmets to become mandatory, but that probably shows the thinking of people in the day. I mean, helmets in hockey are a relatively new invention, for example.
And if anybody's listened to the hockey episode, will know that is insane.
The episode we talked about CTE for a while, weird that. But also the idea that cleaner balls obviously created more hitting in this case. However, all these reasons are probably not why hitting increased from the end of the 1910s. Firstly, an increase in hitting started before August 1920, where the tragic incident happened and more balls were used. And spitballs still continued to be used because players who were using the spitball beforehand were grandfathered in and were allowed to carry on using it. So spitballs didn't even go out of fashion at that point. And the change in the ball structure were fairly minor, so it probably wasn't that. What really changed was tactics and attitude towards free swinging. And it is no understatement to say that happened because of one man and one man only. So to just give you context for this, to explain the impact on the sport of baseball, let me tell you that prior to the 1919 season, the Major League record for home runs since the turn of the century, was 16. That was the record. There was 27 in the 1890s, I think, but 16 was the record in this, became known as the dead ball era of baseball. In 1919, someone hit 29, and in 1920, that same man hit 54. He then hit 59 the following season and 60 in 1927. Which was a record which stood until the 1960s. Not only was he hitting bombs left, right and centre, but he dragged others up with him. In 1919, the second place to his 29 was a man named Gavin Cravath, who got 12 home runs.
Respectable.
But by 1920, because in the record was 16 since the turn of the century, By 1927, Lou Gehrig was second on the list. He hit 47. So he dragged everyone up with him, completely changed the way baseball was played, completely changed the attitude people had towards free swinging and hitting home runs, and therefore brought a lot of fans into the game because people want to see that.
They want to see you go yard.
Yeah, the games were changed, tactics were out, free swinging was in, and all because of one man, and that man was the Bambino. It was the Sultan of Swat, George Herman Babe Ruth. Famously, someone once said about him, "All the lies you've heard about him are true." Which is a good line. He embodies the American dream. He was born in Baltimore, the children of German immigrants, one of only 2 of 7 children to survive to adulthood from this family.
Whoa.
Times were tough. He had little by way of parental love or supervision. He ended up at a preparatory school and orphanage called St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys, which is about as dark a name as you can possibly imagine. A very Catholic institution in Baltimore. He was put there probably on account of what would then be described as delinquency, due to a lack of supervision, basically. He learned trades there as a shirt maker, as a carpenter. His dark complexion and his pronounced lips led to bullying from staff and other pupils, calling him names that I won't repeat on here, but you can probably imagine at an all-white school at the turn of the 20th century in America. His mother died when he was 12. He was allowed a rare departure from the facility for her funeral, so it sounds like a hellish place. But he had a lot of good memories there because once he became rich and famous, he gave a lot of money to this institution and did a lot of fundraising for them. And that was largely in part down to the fact that he got to play sport there. And one sport he became absolutely dominant in, which will surprise no one, was baseball. He was encouraged, he was encouraged particularly in this pursuit by a man named Brother Matthias Boulier, who was a Nova Scotian and a very large man who coached and encouraged him, with Ruth deeply admiring him. And Boulier became a mentor to an otherwise wayward boy. Ruth, as I said, appreciated the establishment enough to be a fundraiser for it in the future, and he actually bought Brother Boulier a Cadillac later as well. So talk about appreciation. Actually bought him 2 Cadillacs because he crashed one of them. Fun story.
Nice. I'd like to know more about that another time.
Yeah. It also influenced Babe later in life to attend many similar facilities and orphanages, hospitals and the like, to meet and play games with the kids there. He was renowned for being very generous with his time and his money to such facilities, even when he was a superstar. He had a really good attitude and a really good reputation for being charitable and just being a nice guy, basically, even though he was also a bit of a madman, which I'll come to. So he had his first taste of pro baseball with the then minor league Baltimore Orioles, obviously a major league team now, in 1914. He started off as a pitcher with a long ball hitting ability. The Orioles were struggling financially, though, and with much interest in Ruth from a number of major league sources, the team eventually sold him and some of his teammates to the Boston Red Sox midway through the 1914 season. So Ruth made his major league debut with a win as a pitcher over the Cleveland Naps, who are now the Cleveland Guardians, previously the Cleveland Indians, previously several other names as well, which I won't be going into, but they are now the Cleveland Guardians. He remained a pitcher and occasional long ball hitter until 1917, when his hitting began to take prominence when several members of the batting lineup went and fought in Europe during World War I.
Yeah, well, I noticed this. The Red Sox wins were during World War One. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically it was only, I think, by 1918 that Major League Baseball was majorly affected. Basically, they told the players, either you have to, well, they told everyone, but this included players, either you have to get a job in the war effort or you have to join the army. They're basically your choices, or the Navy. No other options. So a lot of baseball players got sort of nominal jobs, basically, in factories where they were really just playing baseball and doing PR, but Babe was among them. He filled in basically in batting positions in the lineup. At the time, he was probably the best left-handed pitcher in baseball, so moving him permanently into the batting lineup seemed a crazy move and not something you'd do unless he turned out to be an absolute god at batting.
Which,
spoiler alert.
Yeah. I mean, if people haven't cottoned on yet. And, well, most people know who Babe Ruth is anyway.
So he basically began hitting home runs for fun. His manager predicted that he would beg to move back to pitcher in his first slump. And maybe he would have done if that slump had ever come. But he hit 300 with 11 homers in the war-shortened and World Series winning 1918 season for the Red Sox. As mentioned, that was their last World Series win for a number of years. And he never fully rejoined the pitching rotation, hitting, as I mentioned, that 29 home runs the following year, once he was fully moved into a hitting role, and changed the game of baseball forever. And then he was traded to the Yankees, and the rest, as they say, was Boston lack of history, or history in many cases,
or the Yankees' history. Yeah,
or the Yankees' history. Yeah,
whichever way you put it.
His time at the Yankees, he renewed interest in the game. Attendance has hit an all-time high. He ended up the best paid player in the major league by about double what the next player was paid. He was everything to baseball very, very quickly. He was a womanizer. He was a drinker. Even during Prohibition, he always managed to find himself a drink. But he was also childlike and likable. Childlike in a good way, I mean, like
playful,
if you know what I mean, like playful. Yes. He was also famed for his, I guess you could call it, egalitarianism. He met President Calvin Coolidge once, and his first words to him were, "Hot as hell, ain't it, Prez?" Which is, considered himself on an equal with the president, even in the early 1920s. He also was once negotiating a contract, and he got told that his contract demands were ridiculous because it would make him better paid than Herbert Hoover, who was the current president. This was in 1930, so this was just after the Wall Street crash, and obviously there was a depression on, so he was told, A, there's a depression on, B, this would make you better paid than president. His response was, well, I've had a better year than he's had, to be fair. Which is true.
Not inaccurate, exactly.
So, as I said, joined the Yankees in 1920. He joined a good team in 1920, and he left them in 1934 as the best team in baseball, and they remained the best team in baseball for a good 20, 30 years after that, pretty much. So his time with the Yankees, he won 4 World Series, he won 7 American League pennants. First title was in 1923. They played their cross-state rivals, the New York Giants, now the San Francisco Giants. for the third year in a row, having lost the previous two. In their new stadium, Yankee Stadium, which was the biggest stadium in baseball, Ruth was dominant, hitting .368 with 3 homers and slugging 1,000, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And they won, obviously. So that was his first title. A couple of tougher seasons after that, including the effects of a deeply unhealthy lifestyle that he had coming to hit him. By 1925, he weighed 260 pounds, or 18.5 stone, or 120 kilograms, if you prefer. That covers, I think, everyone.
Yep.
I really hope no one uses anything other than those measures. But during pre-season for the 1925 season, he was taken ill with stomach problems, which became known as the bellyache heard around the world. And to this day, no one's certain what might have caused it, but it was probably overindulgence of some sort. And it was bad enough that the British press printed his obituary, incorrectly, obviously, before he survived and carried on hitting homers for many years to come. 1925 wasn't his best year, but in 1926, the Yankees invested heavily in recruitment and built probably the greatest team in baseball history, if you believe a lot of people. The 1927 Yankees. So they lost the World Series in 1926 to the Cardinals. In 1927, the second of Ruth's World Series wins came, the first of back-to-back titles for, as I said, a team considered one of the finest in baseball history. He was in a team with 6 future Hall of Fame players and a Hall of Fame manager in Miller Huggins as well. He was a key man in what became known as the Murderer's Row, with the first 6 hitters in the Yankees lineup, which were Earl Coombs, Mark Koenig, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Bob Moosell, and Tony Lazzari. The team won 110 of 144 matches that season, which is ridiculous, to win the American League by an absolute mile, 19 games ahead of the Philadelphia Athletics in second, and they swept the Pittsburgh Pirates in the World Series. They repeated in 1928 with a few less regular season wins, but another sweep in the World Series over the Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals, who were probably the great National League team of their era. Met the Yankees in a lot of World Series, or one around them as well. If one or the other weren't in it, the other one was probably winning it. So throughout this, as I said, Ruth was the league's absolute superstar, making twice as much as the next highest paid major league player, making even more than that, selling his name and likeness on products, newspaper articles ghostwritten in his name, appearing on stage in front of adoring fans. He was making it was something like $60,000 a year, and then like $100,000 a year for this on top of it, which is, we're talking millions in today's money, at a time where baseball players, as I said, were often paid $5,000-$10,000 a year. His greatest, or possibly better put, his most legendary moment, came on October the 1st, 1932. So Game 3 of the 1932 World Series was against the Cubs. It had been a feisty series so far, with the Yankees on the Cubs' back for the Cubs players' refusal to fully share the series purse with former Yankee Mark Koenig, who had been traded to the Cubs mid-season, but they'd voted to only give him a half purse because he'd only been around for half the season, and the Yankees took great offence to that, their mate not getting paid properly as they saw it. Before Game 3, the Yankees were already 2-0 up from the first 2 games, and they now moved on to Wrigley Field. And as the players and the wives arrived, they were getting spat on by fans, including Babe Ruth's wife, Claire, and others getting spat on by fans. So to say Babe Ruth was in a bad mood was probably an understatement.
Yeah, it seems like a really good idea to wind up...
Antagonise, yeah.
One of the...
It's like, don't wind up Michael, or don't wind up Babe either.
Yeah, it's got Jordan vibes, isn't it?
Yeah. So the game was tied at 4 at the top of the 5th innings. Ruth came to the plate. He took a strike, as in he took a called strike, pitch 1, and amidst heckling from the opponents and the crowd, he raised a single finger. He then took strike 2, receiving even louder heckles from the Cubs crowd. He raised 2 fingers this time. The moment had come. The moment that's been told and retold for nearly a century, each time probably more spectacularly than the last. And according to the version I'm telling today, Ruth turned around and told Gabby Hartnett, the Cubs catcher, "This next one's going over the fence," or words to that effect. He then reached out his arm, stretched out a finger, and he pointed towards centre field, calling his shot. A move of utter arrogance. And the crowd were absolutely baying for his blood. Ruth later said that he assumed that Cubs pitcher Charlie Root would throw the next pitch outside, basically throw a ball, and that he was committed to swing regardless, so he was expecting to get struck out. But Root threw a fastball right down the middle, and Ruth connected as well as anyone ever had at Wrigley Field before. sailed
Nukes.
over everyone's heads and into the very bleachers that he'd pointed towards just moments before. He'd called his shot and then delivered on it. Amongst the crowd was the then presidential candidate Franklin D. Roosevelt, who apparently just laughed himself silly as Ruth strolled casually around the bases. The hit was the game's decisive moment. The Yankees won 7-5 to take a 3-0 series lead and wrapped up a whitewash in Game 4 the following night to win his 4th World Series as a player. Oh,
That's boss.
that's what I mean. I don't care if that story's true or not. And people have analysed it to the nth degree. They've looked at game footage and said, oh, is he not pointing at the bench instead of pointing at the bleachers? Is he doing this? I don't care. That does not need to be analysed in that moment. There were some stories about sport and
Just choose to believe them.
It doesn't matter. Why does it matter? Yes, he might be a Cubs fan and he might be a bit annoyed by that. But shut up and watch 2016 over again. Don't worry about 1932. Just let it go. It's a good story.
Let everyone else have 1932. Yeah.
So some things are more important than others, and I don't care how true it was.
I also just
It's a great story.
I just really love those stories as well of guys that
are so good.
that transcend their sport, and are so far above everybody else, their peers, that they make professional sport look easy. When you're up against the best of the best, but it's like you're having a knock around in the garden.
It's like this, whatever the truth of the story, it could be true. He was that good, he probably could have done that. And maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Let's just believe he did, because it's a much better story and it makes a lot of people very happy thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Oh, I've lost the ability to breathe now, goodness. By 1934... ironically, his years of heavy living had caught up with him, which apparently mine are now doing to me. Though Ruth could still hit, he managed to hit a solid .288 with 22 home runs that year. He could barely run and he could barely field. He left the Yankees at the end of the season, having hoped without luck, unfortunately, to be offered the manager's position there, which was something that haunted him for the rest of his life, or that being denied manager's positions a few times, unfortunately. Haunted him for the rest of his life, but him and his wife decided to tour the world instead in the off-season, including a stop in the United Kingdom where he tried his hand at cricket and unsurprisingly found himself to be quite good at it, although not perhaps in the traditional technical sense, but certainly swinging for the rafters. He actually broke his bat in the process, but any chance of a change in career were lost as soon as he found out what cricketers were paid, which was, to say the least, not as much as he was. He had a turbulent and unsuccessful part of a season, or a couple of months, at the Boston Braves in 1935. His batting average had by then sunk to a mere 155 by May. He tried to retire, but he'd been persuaded to stick it out a few games longer. However, on May the 25th, 1935, it is impossible not to be romantic about baseball, because Babe Ruth rolled back the years to go 4 from 4 with 3 home runs, the last of which, his final home run in baseball, his 714th home run in baseball, still third on the all-time list, cleared the stadium entirely. The first time anyone had ever homered a ball out of Forbes Field. He nearly retired on the spot, but he kept his promise and played a few more games, and eventually retired on June the 2nd. As I said, he's still third on the all-time list, only topped by Hank Aaron and Barry Bonds on that list.
And one of them's a doper.
Yep, one of them I really should be talking about more. I really don't have time in this episode to talk about Hank Aaron, but in a future episode I will be, because he's a legend.
Well, he's coming back soon.
Indeed. He was one of... Babe Ruth was one of 5 inductees into the original Hall of Fame. He has his own section in the museum, which I can attest to. Quite a large section, as you'd imagine. He was inducted alongside Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, Christy Mathewson, and Walter Johnson as the first 5 inductees. He coached a bit into his retirement. He helped the US making appearances during the war for the war effort. But he, as I said, he never got given a managerial post, which is really what he wanted. His health was always a concern. He tried to cut back on his drinking, but he fell ill in 1946 with a tumour in his skull and neck, likely caused by heavy tobacco use. His fame and wealth allowed him to access good treatment, including experimental radiation therapy, and he got well enough that in 1947 he was able to help writing his largely ghost-written autobiography. His condition unfortunately deteriorated, though. In 1948, and on August the 16th, at 8:01 p.m., the greatest player ever to play the sport of baseball died in his sleep, aged 53, in New York City, the city that adored him. He was one of the first true celebrity athletes, probably the first to transcend his sport, including in a financial sense, and he's probably as big an icon of American sport as anyone, except perhaps on par with maybe Muhammad Ali, matching him for greatness, perhaps. But I mean,
doesn't matter. You don't need to hierarchy them.
So why I think he is arguably one of the greatest, and I think it's a very fair thing to put. And I know a lot of people take the mick out of like American centralism of only concentrating on the road sports and Babe Ruth's the best. Well, have you considered these many players from many other sports you don't play? Blah blah. I don't think anyone has been that good and transformed the game that much and been that much better of their peers all at the same time. Been that in excess of their peers and also transform the game. I think the only person you can sort of compare him to and being that much better than his peers in a similar sport is Don Bradman.
Yeah.
Which I think is a fair comparison. Yeah. But cricket wasn't quite as... It wasn't the commercial sport that baseball was, so
played with
maybe didn't have quite
two
the same...
teams at that point, really.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I just think I'm really, really glad I got to look more into his story.
Yeah.
I knew a bit about it, and again, I've skirted through a bit there. There's a lot more depth you can go into, and he's got his autobiography, there's films written about him. There's obviously a lot of pictures of him and a lot of pictures and videos of him in his retirement, and he's such a, I don't know.
They're the figures and the icons that like echo through the ages, and it capture people's hearts and minds even now. And like that's the kind of impact you're talking about. Is people will hear and learn of his legend, and then they'll read about him and still be inspired by him because he was so damn good.
Yeah, I think it's just sport it's about, as I say, baseball is about collective memory. It's about history. It's about everything going into, like, the reason 2016 meant so much to the Cubs was because of the 108 years before it. The reason 2004 meant so much to the Red Sox was because of the 84 years or whatever it is before that, 86 years. Everything goes into making what the game is now, and the game is as entertaining as it is now and played in the way it is now, which is you always get sluggers and you always get swing first, think later kind of people who the fans love to see and are very entertaining. And it's because of him, and it's influenced by him, and everything is on the back of him. And it's such a wonderful essential part of baseball.
Yeah, built on his shoulders. And like, I think the thing that's really cool about like sport, and that like ties this back to the playoffs that are starting now, is that there's someone who's going to like write themselves into the history books in a way that, or potentially are in a way that we've been talking about. And that's the reason why these stories are so cool and these individuals are so cool. So we already mentioned Shohei Ohtani. Like, the Dodgers are still in this. They're the current holders. Yeah. He's one of the greatest of all time. He's also in a stacked lineup. The Dodgers have also got Mookie Betts, who's a legend in his own right.
Incredible. Like, a very good bowler as well, as in 10-pin bowling.
Yeah, he is.
in case you know that.
I did know that. That's true.
Yeah.
So you got the Dodgers, but then at the other end of the spectrum, because we were talking about, we've given some really cool stories about the curses and like the longevity that people the curses and how long people have had to wait for their own successes and that sort of thing. And in this year's iteration, so there are 5 teams that have never won the World Series. One of them whom is very familiar to you in the Rockies.
Yes.
But the
did get to one once.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. San Diego Padres, Tampa Bay Rays, Milwaukee Brewers, and Seattle Mariners are the others that have never won one. Only the Mariners are the Mariners are the only team to have never made a World Series, and 3 of them are in the hunt this year. Yeah. So you've still got the Padres in, you've still got the Brewers in, and you've still got the Mariners in. So you've got both ends of that spectrum. Yeah. You got Ohtani, who's sort of not in Ruth's his level of legend, but like he's up there as like a obvious future Hall of Famer and one of the greatest two-ways, if not the greatest genuine two-way player of all time, like looking to cement his legacy further. And then you've got teams trying to win it for the first time ever and break very, very long droughts. It's everywhere. If you look, it's everywhere.
It is everywhere. And it's going to be great. It's always great. And the good news about the Colorado Rockies is they're not the worst team in baseball. They just barely got ahead of, was it the White Sox last year, who were the worst team in baseball ever, certainly in a 162-game season. The Rockies just barely cleared them, but the Rockies are still very, very bad.
So the wait goes on for the
gradually
Rockies.
Worse.
But
They were actually decent when I started following them. What was it, 7 or 8 years ago? How times change.
How times change. Have we exhausted baseball?
Well, we better bloody exhaust the baseball because we've got no time to talk about anything else.
Yeah. I think we've probably taken it as far as we can this week. But tune in.
We certainly haven't exhausted baseball. There will be many more baseball to come.
There will be loads of baseball to come. And I took the liberty of checking where this is on because it's a bit more niche. So ESPN in Australia, Sportsnet are DS and TVA in Canada. The Chinese won't listen to us, so let's not worry about them. Japan,
We've not had any listeners from China yet.
Yeah, well, it's probably because it's blocked.
We had one from Hong Kong, actually, so that is a lie. No, we did. I do apologise.
Spozone, NHKJ Sports, Abima TV in Japan. Oh, God, Central America, ESPN, basically. Unless you're in Mexico. Well, ESPN in Mexico as well. Fox have, I think, it in the States. And over here it's TNT. Or Discovery Plus, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
On the continent, BN Sports in France, Sport 1 Germany, South Africa, ESPN. So yeah, probably ESPN. If you're not sure, ESPN.
There's probably an MLB streaming channel as well. There seems to be for everything.
Yeah.
So always an option. Anyway,
yeah.
baseball.
Next week, Rugby League.
Rugby League, yes. Super League Grand Final, which unfortunately Wakefield Trinity won't be in. Not that was ever likely. But they got to the playoffs, which is great.
Yeah, well,
I'd call that a win.
Done very well. Yeah, well, we'll do Rugby League, and then after that, it's archery, whilst you're away.
Yes, whilst I'm away, but somehow we will mysteriously get an episode out.
Mm-hmm. How could that possibly happen? Right, let's go watch the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, it's actually started to turn a little bit. It's not going quite as well now. I feel like maybe we've jinxed it. I mean, we're still
6 points up.
6 points up. Again.
6 points up, and the Americans, as we watch, have like a 20-footer to tie the final game.
Okay.
So let's see. Okay, let's leave it there. See you in a bit, mate.
See you in a bit. Bye. Ooh, boy, the Ryder Cup was closer than we thought it was going to be. Congratulations to the European team, commiserations to any American who was well behaved, and thank you to everyone who listened today and for all the months we've been doing this. We really, really, really do appreciate it. If you want to give a little back, then a subscribe, a rating, a review, all those things would be swell. But as ever, please do tell your friends about us. There's nothing better. I really mean that. Our theme tune is Oh Yeah by Harmony Productions. You can find us on Instagram and Blue Sky at The Sporting Almanac. Drop us an email at thesportingalmanacpodcast@gmail.com. Next up, it's Super League. Plenty to talk about there already from this weekend. Until then, whether you love the numbers or the romance of baseball is enough for you, sport is nothing without the history that makes it. Goodbye.